Schedules of dilapidations can be used by landlords to demand their tenants pay them tens of thousands of pounds or even hundreds of thousands of pounds at lease end. Unlike residential tenancies, commercial leases don't have fair wear and tear clauses. This catches out many tenants at lease end who don't understand what their lease means and don't understand why they're being hit with such an enormous claim. I'm Tim Clarke, and I'll be looking at how both landlords and tenants can benefit from a schedule of dilapidations. Receiving a schedule of dilapidations as a tenant can be a terrifying experience, particularly if you haven't seen one before. This is a document spelling out the relevant lease clauses alongside a list of breaches of the lease with proposals of how you can set these right. Normally, we'd expect the list of breaches to be reasonable, such as fixing a broken window or replacing a worn out carpet, but some surveyors can get a bit overzealous, complaining about an unshiny doorknob, or, as I had recently, a slightly rusty but perfectly functional outside gate hinge. Most schedules, if served around lease end, will also set out cost estimates for completing the necessary repair work. These costs will normally form the basis of a landlord's financial claim if the works aren't completed by a tenant. Construction work can be surprisingly expensive, so once all of these individual breaches have been tallied up, and on costs like surveyor's fees, loss of rent and VAT added on, the final figure can be huge. From this point of view, it might look like a schedule of dilapidations will only benefit the landlord. If completed after lease end, this might be true, but often, obtaining a schedule of dilapidations before lease end can help the tenant. If you're a business tenant coming up to the final year or two of your lease and you don't plan to stay put, it's a good idea to ask your landlord to prepare a schedule of dilapidations. Here's why. Leases can be very complicated and difficult to understand. In addition, what might look okay to you repair-wise might look very different to a construction professional. Obtaining a schedule of dilapidations prior to lease end can draw together the relevant lease clauses and set out what work you need to complete in order to comply with your lease clauses. It can be unambiguous and will show you what a landlord will be looking for at lease end. With this knowledge, you can obtain quotations for building work yourself and keep control of your own costs, rather than letting the landlord's gold-plated contractors with high overheads complete work at your cost. If you really don't agree with the content of the schedule, obtaining this early can give you a chance to negotiate with your landlord prior to lease end, when they often still have a vested interest in keeping you happy. While it isn't essential that dilapidations claims are sorted before lease end, doing so can allow you to free up any provision sums you have made in your business to invest in other projects. Depending on your internal resource as a tenant, you might want to manage the remedial work yourself rather than incurring the additional cost of a contract administrator. Do be careful though, as using a contract administrator can give you a good level of protection if things go wrong and can free up an enormous amount of your time for other things, like running your business. Of course, as a tenant, you might decide to obtain your own dilapidations advice before you receive your schedule. That's fine, and I'd always recommend that tenants take advice on dilapidations before lease end, but doing so after you have received your own schedule can allow your surveyor to give you very targeted advice and save them from having to consider a whole load of what-ifs, spending more of your profit on their time. Normally, a schedule of dilapidations is served at lease end, but they can also be served partway through a lease. This step is typically only taken if a landlord is really concerned about the condition of the property. Interim schedules of dilapidations will normally contain only items which, if not addressed, will lead to bigger, more expensive works being required. As a business owner who isn't a building specialist, you might not understand the implications of neglecting maintenance. In this instance, while a landlord can benefit from the reassurance that their asset is being looked after, so can tenants benefit, safe in the knowledge that a stitch in time saves 9. Of course, while schedules of dilapidations can benefit both landlords and tenants, there are drawbacks. From the landlord's perspective, if their surveyor massively overclaims, they can be disappointed at the outcome or, worse, incur massively inflated costs, paying their surveyor to argue about a huge claim they were never going to win. From the tenant's side, it is common that they feel their landlord is overclaiming, and it could highlight huge unexpected costs. While it doesn't mean that the costs weren't there already written into a contract, knowing about them can be the cause of sleepless nights. As with the landlord, tenant surveyors' fees can easily rack up when defending overblown or unfair claims. At least if a schedule is served early, these things can be sorted out before lease end. If you're on the receiving end of a schedule of dilapidations, the law expects you to respond to your landlord within a reasonable time, normally within 56 days of receiving a schedule of dilapidations. We'd always recommend speaking to a qualified and competent dilapidation surveyor before you do so. You could lose out either through creating arguments you have no prospect of winning, as you don't understand the case law underlying your lease clauses, or for giving away too much to your landlord for exactly the same reason. Whether you're a landlord looking to ensure your building is kept up to spec, or a commercial tenant facing a dilapidations claim, we have a team of expert dilapidation surveyors who can help you. We can be contacted through harrisonclarke.co.uk and we'll be delighted to help with your dilapidations issues.